Hello my viewers, today I am here to dismantle a video from the right-wing news channel RedPill Shark, and to show that everything is not as grim for the EU as the populists say. As always, the sources are in the description, and I would ask you to watch this video first to make sure I don't misrepresent him.
So when there is an issue of the rule of law, there is no hiding behind national sovereignty, because you have agreed in the treaty you have signed and ratified that these issues can be discussed at the European level.
What you saw there was a member of the European Union's Parliament chastising the Prime Minister of Poland for hiding behind something as silly as national sovereignty, while defying the globalist agenda.
His video starts with a speech from EU-Commission Vice President Frans Timmermans that he held in reference to the Polish constitutional crisis of the year 2016. Where he did nothing but to remind the Polish president that when joining the EU, Poland agreed to follow the principle of the separation of power into legislative, executive and judicial powers. So his speech is actually not shaming Sudlo for hiding behind anything like national sovereignty. He's not even mentioning it. He just reminded her that Poland has to bound to the contracts that they agreed on, or take it from the website of the EU, about how a country can join the Union. Any country that satisfies the conditions for membership can apply. These conditions are known as the Copenhagen criteria and include a free market economy, a stable democracy, and the rule of law, and the acceptance of all EU legislations, including the euro. Therefore, Mr. Timmermans is actually trying to protect Polish citizens from their own government, grasping for too much power without any reasonable control. But the funny thing is that the Polish people actually approve of this behavior of the EU. Support for staying in the European Union has reached a record high in Poland, despite the country's right-wing populist movement staging a political showdown with Brussels over the rule of law. A new survey by pollsters CBOS shows 92% of the Polish population want to remain in the EU, up 3% on the last poll, with just 8% wanting to leave, down 3%. And if they would be so happy with their populist nationalist government, then they would not have voted so heavily against them that the current Prime Minister would have to ask his parliament for a vote of confidence into him.
But this is not even the most blatant display of EU overreach. Take a look at this clip of Mr. Verhofstadt blatantly calling for the dissolvement of the nation state.
And that is the real problem, colleagues. Why there is such a problem in this crisis? Because member states are reluctant to transfer new sovereignty and powers to the European Union. And we all know that the only way out of this crisis is a new transfer of powers to the European Union and to the European institutions.
A few background informations to this segment. This speech is from 2011. The crisis he's talking about is the euro currency crisis. The government he is referring to are the ones who signed up to the euro but didn't stick to the rules. Those are the powers he was saying should be centralized. He is in total not talking about the United States of Europe, but that maybe when you share a currency, then you also need to stand under shared control. Or as the euro crisis showed, this is, at least at some point, justified.
Here is a quick rundown of how all of this sort of works. Each member of the EU has a proportional representation in the parliament based on population. Germany has the most representatives with 99 MEPs, and smaller countries such as Estonia have as few as 7. This is one reason why so many people assert the EU is nothing more than an extension of the German government.
This here is bluntly misunderstood in two ways. First, yes, Germany is the country in the EU with the largest population, of course also has the largest pools of MEPs to be voted upon, but that doesn't mean that they are an extension of the German government, since MEPs from a variety of parties are elected. That definitely won't all follow along the decisions of the German administration. And when calculating with Sharky's numbers, as a German, I would go so far and say that we actually deserve more than just 99 MEPs, since one MEP in Germany represents around 820,000 people, while one of the 7 Estonians only represent about 180,000 citizens. But the same applies to the US, and no one with a right-wing preference ever complained about an Alabama voice being worth more than one from California.
It is also important to note that these representatives are elected differently based on their countries of origin. Some countries elect all representatives at the national level, while others send representatives elected by regional elections. Once these MEPs are sent to Parliament, they are allowed to join one political group. And in order for a political group to be viable, it must be formed of 25 members from no less than 7 countries. And while currently there are 2 big players in these political groups, one being the European People's Party and the other being the Socialist and Democrat Alliance. Now, bearing the name Socialist and Democrat Alliance, the group is exactly what you expect it to be. However, the European People's Party is a bit more difficult to comprehend. But the president of the EPP is on record saying Angela Merkel is the beacon of European values. Now, that should provide all the context you should need. But if not, the EPP is self-described as conservative Christian Democrat, and that should sound familiar.
Not sure what he means in regards of the SD, but they are better described by their German name. Fraktion der Progressiven Allianz der Sozialdemokraten im Europäischen Parlament. Fraction of the Progressive Alliance of the Social Democrats in the European Parliament. They have a strong emphasis on equality in society and workers' rights, and also for a strong state in regards of healthcare and education. While the EPP is, as Sharky points out, an alliance of Catholic conservative MEPs in the parliament.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel was recently ousted as leader of this political party in her home country of Germany, largely due to the efforts of the closed borders Eurosceptic party known as the Alternative for Deutschland, who, by the way, is now polling as the 2nd largest political party in Germany.
I guess he is technically not wrong about Merkel resigning, but correlation doesn't mean causation, and so it is more likely that Merkel, who won't candidate for Chancellor again after 16 years in power when she is finished, is making the road free for her party to find a worthy successor for Merkel's office chair. And well, Sharky's info about the AfD being the 2nd highest polling party in Germany was already false when he published his video. This is the current poll, and here you can see that actually the left-wing Green Party is getting the 2nd most votes, followed by the Social Democrat SPD. That doesn't really look like Germany wants an alternative for Germany, huh?
But news from Germany gets even darker for the European Union. Reportedly, nearly half of Germans want a Brexit-like referendum, while 2/3 of Germans believe the EU is headed in the wrong direction.
I think since the survey and the article are almost 3 years old, I guess we can safely agree that they are not contemporary anymore and therefore invalid.
For these reasons, populists in Europe have the EU elections in their crosshairs. Keep in mind, Italy just did a 180 and elected a populist government this year. Hungary and Poland are both in bitter battles with the EU over national sovereignty issues. Austria abandoned globalism for populism in their most recent elections. And of course, there's Brexit, which shows the British attitude towards the European Union. But in addition to all of that, as seen on screen now, nearly every member of the European Union has a growing populist movement within its borders. Many mainstream publications are already lamenting the fact that in many electoral districts, the choice is going to be between right and, quote, far right. Clearly, the globalists are worried, as they should be. But yes, grabbing a Eurosceptic majority in Parliament is highly unlikely, but I would like to point out how ineffective and deeply divided the American government is. Obstruction is a powerful tool, as we are now demonstrating in the US with yet another government shutdown. Tell me in the comments below, would a completely stalled out and ineffective European Union really bother you? But all is not sunshine and rainbows. 2014 marked the lowest turnout ever for an EU parliamentary election.
As a glorious conclusion, it is only left to say that I am not sure if all hope for the EU is actually lost. And it shouldn't be. This institution around the grand cooperation of the former arch-enemies France and Germany was not only a ground for wealth, security, stability and individual freedom, but has also prevented a war to happen in the center of Europe since 1945. So why should we abolish it? Wrong about it now that it has done so much good before. And where could individualism and over-patriotism lead us? Maybe, but does anyone really want that? The EU, in all of its existence, has mastered now already a few crises. One election alone will not bring it to fall. Its free market also has become such a big economic factor that a country's government can fall into chaos by planning to leave it. I also strongly believe that in the EU Parliament, by having more than just two factions, a blockade and a shutdown like in the US is very unlikely. And as the last few months showed, with the UK leaving the EU, and therefore the only country out that always wanted an extra piece of cake, the Union actually has gained leeway. EU approval among its citizens is on the highest it has ever been, and I am sure that this is what's going to keep Le Pen and co. small in the parliament. I mean, until they get kicked out of it again for the misuse of public money, of course. But I would like to ask you directly, Sharky, to discuss this with me personally. What makes nationalism so interesting for you? What has it ever done for you to deserve so much of your passion? And why do you dislike the EU so much? So please, if you find time to do so, send me a message on Twitter and let's have a normal and civilized discussion about the topic. But who am I to judge? I'm just an observer from inside the pond. Thank you for watching. In the next few weeks I have a video planned for one of my favorite video games, namely Company of Heroes 2. If you liked the video, please let me know, and stay tuned for more.